Okay, I've noticed that it is blinking a bit, but I guess that's what we can do, right? So thank you everyone for being here. I'm going to be as quick as possible because, as Phil mentioned, I'm married as of now. When I get home might be a different story. But thank you for being here. I've got actually a really interesting day. So my wife was actually at a baby shower first thing in the morning. Then we've got an open for inspection, so we're trying to sell the house in this wonderful weather, which is going to be interesting. Then I have a bucks party, so my cousin's getting married, and it's going to be axe throwing. And again, in this weather, I hope to have my limbs by the end of the day as well. And then, yeah, who knows what else has to come. I'm sure there's many more surprises still, but again, you know, it always happens at once. And, you know, when Phil told me this is it, then I said, no, I'm going to be here, irrespective of what's happening. I'm going to be here and support this. So definitely appreciate you also being here. So just to give you a bit of insight into what I am going to talk about. Yep. I'm looking at automating the intelligent enterprise. And the reason why I'm doing that, go with that one, okay. The reason why I'm doing that is because a lot of people are using out external tools and external products to try and, I guess, automate some of the processes that already exist in SAP. What I've got here is a bit of a timeline of some of the technologies that SAP released to help kind of automate some of the processes you already have. So back in early 96, you have a look, that's when we had business workflow actually on-prem on the device. And then you have a look at, we've got the universal work list so we can do our approvals. And as we move on, and basically I won't go into it too much because I don't want to take up too much time, but all these technologies which we developed on-premise, we're pretty much making available now in the cloud, on Cloud Platform. So actually I normally ask, and I'm afraid to ask sometimes, but how many people have actually used the SAP Cloud Platform? Okay, great. I'm worried. I go to places and they go, I don't know what you're talking about. And I'm going, oh my, it's only been out for 4 years. But no, I'm glad. And I'll talk a little bit about Cloud Platform just to talk about some of the new things that are coming. But hopefully, during this presentation, we go through it. I guess that slide there was talking about the integration with the separate technology or disparate technologies. We've got technologies including Excel, Word, and some of these other parts which we use to kind of integrate and communicate with SAP. But what we're really looking at is having this, here we go, connect to Mac, intelligent business platform. So the whole idea of not only having, I guess, SAP technologies, but the whole idea of, being able to implement business process and being able to seamlessly connect and execute, a business process using SAP. And just, I guess, the next slide here quickly, the Cloud Platform. So the whole idea and what we're going to be talking about, for a while we had a term called Leonardo. Try and forget the word Leonardo. Right? It was a marketing ploy. It was, the CEO who no longer works as SAP. So don't. If you see the word Leonardo, just think of Cloud Platform and business services, right? Because that's where it's all kind of moving towards. Right? And we've kind of evolved, and I'll have a different slide and I'll talk about it in a bit more detail. But what we're looking at doing is developing, I guess the Internet of Things, machine learning, and some of the other technologies which are robotic process automation, all these other tools on top. Now, we're also infrastructure agnostic. Now, interestingly enough, that icon there is Alibaba. I reckon the coronavirus has got it, but it's basically, we are going to be cloud agnostic. We will work with any cloud infrastructure provider that's required. The reason why Alibaba, we have to work with the Chinese government, so we will work with their cloud platform, right? So that's what we're doing there for. But Google Cloud Platform, Azure, AWS, and this will keep expanding, right? Because we don't want to be tied down to any particular hyperscaler. I'm seriously, I wonder what happened to that icon. Anyway. So machine learning. So this is also another big topic which, I'm starting to see a lot more. And when it comes down to business context, before I lose this, We're using machine learning in different ways to what we're seeing it being used in consumer industries, or I guess in like, consumer-based technologies. I'm seeing a lot of people use machine learning to do things like, what they call deep fakes and things like that, right? So you try and pretend, or you put your face on someone that isn't really doing something and moving ahead. Where with SAP and what we're going to be doing around AI and business services is look at how we can improve a business process using artificial intelligence and machine learning. Okay, I'm going to show you some of the technologies. One technology I'm going to show in particular is something called document information extraction, and it basically allows us to grab a PDF and extract all the SAP content from that PDF and then match it against master data. Right, so that's one of the new AI business services which we have available. We've also got a whole platform called data intelligence. I'm not going to go into data intelligence today because that's its own presentation in itself, but also a great bit of technology which we've released both in the cloud and on-premise. But if I have a look at, I guess, some of the key technologies around our process automation, we've got everything from process experiences, so looking at, now obviously the big acquisition of Qualtrics and being able to get that feedback and then putting it straight into the product. So that's that whole experience there. Process flexibility, so looking at all the different extensions and capabilities. The SAP Cloud Extension Factory, or the some of the solutions we're doing on there, it's actually really great. For those who don't know, when it comes down to Cloud Platform, we're going to be releasing a harmonized SDK. So for now, if you want to extend, success factors, you've got to get the success factors SDK. If you want to extend C for HANA, you've got to get the C for. We're going to provide one SDK which will allow you to extend all of it, right? It's going to be all using a pub sub approach, Kafka approach. So that's coming up. There's already kind of early beta releases of it, but that's going to be some exciting things. Conversational user experience. I love using this tool because it's really easy to use. I'm not sure if people have used conversational AI. If you haven't, cai.sap.com. Have a play. There's tutorials there. It's really, really easy to use. Okay, I won't go into creating a bot today. I've done it before, I think, at some of the other sessions. But yeah, it really is quite simple to do. The other thing is, process visibility. So people talk about automating business process, but sometimes we're automating business process and not really understanding why. So what we've released is a couple of tools to give you some insight into how certain processes are running, how well they're running. So we've got process visibility, which kind of talks to you about the performance of the process. And then we've got Coloudis process mining, which actually goes through, I'll talk about it in a bit more detail. And we're soon going to be releasing another product called Spotlight, and I'll talk a little bit about that as well. All the way to intelligent automation. I'm actually going to do a live demo, so hopefully the demo gods are with me. I don't think they are so far considering what's happened, but we'll see what happens. We've got, and the nice thing about our RPA is, it runs in the cloud, and what I'm going to show you is different things. So you can actually expose your RPA bot as an API. So then what you can do is you can then, you've got a workflow. Let's say someone's got a third-party system, let it be Salesforce or something. Something comes in, a sales order of over 500,000. It has to go through a workflow. Once a workflow is either approved or rejected, it can then automate a bot to execute something in the back end. So I'll talk a little bit about that. There's some really cool stuff we're doing around there, and also business rules. Not as extensive as BRF, but has some basic capability there to kind of do some execution. We've also got the whole ability of being able to visualize the tools, and then the digital experience. So I'm still, someone who for people who know me, I've done a lot of work in the mobile space. So the whole idea of Portal, Fiori 3.0, and again the native SDKs both for iOS and Android. So if we have a look at the different technologies, we've got Cloud Platform Workflow. Has anyone used Cloud Platform Workflow? We've got a few people. Yeah. Okay, more people than what I was expected. It's actually quite an easy tool to use and run, especially when you're receiving external calls or from external systems. You can run the workflow. Now, we're releasing another product coming out soon called One Inbox, and that will work with workflow to then be able to bring everything in both. So if you've got approvals from your Salesforce or other third party, then it can bring it into here and you can do all your approvals through one central control. So that's something really nice. SAP Cloud Platform Business Rules obviously allows you to do some basic business rule functionality in the cloud. Process process visibility. So again, talking about the whole idea of identifying when certain things happen with a particular process and then being able to optimize it. Celonis, which is actually a real powerful tool. If you haven't used it before, it goes through all your processes and identifies where the bottlenecks are. Right? So you can see, okay, if we take this approach, this took an extra 20 minutes to complete a particular process. Now, I always recommend for people who are looking at automating to do a bit of analysis first, right? Because there's no use automating a bad process. Right? It's just, yeah, you'll have to fix it at some point in time. This will just band-aid it for now. Right? What we've also got, the SAP Workflows, the live transactions, triggers, and then RPA as well. I've got the picture and diagram, and what I want to do is just quickly, I mean, this is the vision. The vision is, you know, we're going to use chatbots, so I can use a chatbot to say, well, I'd like to take a leave request. It then will then execute a bot in the background, which can then call SAP transactions in the background, and then bring it forward, right? And then what we're doing is then having the whole idea of then having machine learning, so it knows, rather than you having to teach it every time, it learns. Also, when screens changes, or with our bots, for those who don't know, I mean, obviously we're building a lot of bots for S4. Every time you update a field, a screen or something, we're going to be releasing new bots, right? Now, we're going to have a bit of intelligence in there, hopefully, so if there's some slight adjustments which it doesn't know, it will know how to adapt, or ask you, you want to fix this script, and it will fix it, rather than you having to redo the whole script for automation. Right? That's the vision. We're not there yet, because, you know, we're fairly new to RPA. We only released this product as of last year, April last year. Okay? We bought a company called Contexta, and they've been doing it for 10 years. But, you know, putting it into the SAP context, I mean, they were doing some SAP processes, but now, as part of SAP, this is a fairly new area for us, okay? And that's why, I mean, a lot of people say, well, we don't see you in the Gartner, we don't see you in everything. It's because we're fairly new to it. We were asked to, if we wanted to be part of the evaluation for RPA bots, and we said no, just because we're new, and, you know, if you're new to a game, then you're going to get a pretty bad score because there's not many people out there using it. So we cut off, we're not going to be released in this year, but maybe next year you'll see us in the Gartner quadrant. So just to give you a bit of insight there. But when it comes down to bots, we support attended and unattended. So for people who don't know what that is, unattended means, you know, we're processing mass invoices. You don't need someone to sit there and help approve. Or attended is a person is sitting there helping the bot move along. Where I'm seeing a lot of work is actually in the attended space. And the reason, and there's a few reasons for attended. So there's this concept or philosophy of something called human in the loop, right? And actually we won a really big deal in Korea. I had to fly to Korea to work on this deal. And they were running a third-party RPA system which didn't have attended bots. And what was happening is the unattended bot was running, creating mistakes, and then people would get back in the morning and have to fix up all the mistakes which the bot created, which was just as painful as then having to enter the data in again, right? So they've just wasted a whole lot of time. So we went in there with an attended bot, and what this allows us to do is if the mistake happens live, and actually I'm going to show you a bot and when a mistake picks up as well, a person can then execute and fix it then and there. And so what we're doing is normally where a human will take, let's say, an hour to, let's say, do a customer onboarding. We're at AGL, let's say, because they're having to go between a CRM and ISU, right? We can now write scripts to help automate some of those things. So the customer service rep just runs a script. It brings up the ISU, brings up the CRM, and it can automate some of the entry fields to put into there. Right? So what we're seeing is that normally processes like that, which would take, as I said, up to 50 minutes, we've now got it down to 5 because we've got the scripts that can execute and complete some of these things. Now, not only, I guess, in the energy field, I mean, this is also big in banking. So loan origination, accounts origination, so being able to do things like that. So to give you a basic overview of what the RPA architecture looks like, we've got a desktop, and in desktop we've got the application. It's kind of like an agent which sits there. And what we do is with the application we develop, I guess, our packages, which are basically our bots. Our bots, and I'll show you the bots in a bit more detail, our bots are pretty much packaged JavaScript code. Right? Unlike some of the other RPA tools, I think you've got to develop in C# and some of the other developers, all of ours are JavaScript. And the nice thing is that JavaScript or Node.js is how we're harmonizing across our environment as well. So if you want to do conversational AI, that's Node.js. right? So we're kind of becoming more dependent on some of these new technologies, or we're using some of these new technologies, so you don't have to learn something new, and you can use, I guess, more resources who understand Node.js to do some of this stuff, right? So we develop the package then gets pushed out to the cloud. That's when we can configure and monitor. I'll show you the cloud platform tools as well. And then based on when it's being executed, it gets pushed down to the desktop, and then the RPA bot can run. So it's pretty much here's a kind of like a deployment diagram. We've got our servers, both attended and unattended. We do all the orchestration and monitoring in the platform, and then we've got our IDE, which is a project development environment. Okay. So, actually, what I might do now is get into the environment. So let me turn that off. Get into this. So I'm just going to end my show. Now, our environment for RPA is based on Windows. What I'll do is I'll just quickly show you, timed out. It's all right. This is the cloud environment. And this is where we can kind of deploy our bots. I'll show you a bit of information. While that's loading, if you haven't already seen it, there's a Best Practices Explorer. This is, obviously we're targeting S4. These are being updated like every 2 weeks. So I think now we're over 20 different bots which we're making available for you to download onto your environment, right? So all these are pre-scripted bots which you can use in your environment. Now, we're targeting S4. Now, there's no reason why you can't adapt these bots to work with ECC, right? We've just made them for S4 because obviously that's the new ERP, but I've also had to grab these and I've adjusted them for ECC instances, right, but there's not much change. So yeah, there's a huge list here, and we're making more and more bots available, okay? So if you haven't already had a look, have a look at the Best Practices Explorer. Let's see what's going on here. Maybe I'll go straight into the IDE, talk about what I'm going to do. Okay, so this all runs on Windows, right? So a lot of the technologies we're working with in the RPA world is around, I guess, Windows-based or Microsoft-based technologies. I think 80% of the requests involve bringing information from Excel or Word into SAP for automation. Right? So the libraries developed here are quite targeted towards that. So the example I've got here is actually a financials demo. So where people have like their end of month financials and they want to, I guess, send or upload it to the latest, the general ledger. So what I've got here is an Excel spreadsheet. I've only got a few entries in here. So the company code now, what I've purposely done is I've purposely made an incorrect company code there to try and demonstrate what happens when the bot fails, so you can get some insight. So here's my bot workflow. So I'm going to start my bot. I'm going to select a file. I'm then going to display the message status. I'm going to then log on to SAP. Once I get into the management, I'm going to then go, depending on the kind of management, it might be multiple logon, but if not, then I go into my standard, and then I'll enter in all the data. So this is a basic file upload capability. So what I can do now is I can run this. I'm going to hit the run. So as you can see, Node is firing up because it's all done in Node.js. It's running. I'm going to close my... So it starts, okay. So this is actually just going to deploy it onto my local desktop. So what I've got here, I've got it here. Now I'm going to say post FI documents for current month. I'm going to open up my file. So I've just got it on my desktop. Book. It's running. Oh. Opening up my Excel file in the background, reading in the data. It says it found 2 entries, so I had 2 entries for this month, if you looked at the dates. It's opening up my SAP, logging into S4, entering the credentials. Enter is in data. Picked up a bad company code. Data will be lost. Running through. Entering a good company code. Processing transaction of 2. So let's put it in there. I think I purposely messed that up. Well, I've created a real trouble now. Yeah, I blew that. There we go. Because I put it too forward in time. So let me just hit stop. Let me close you. Yes. Okay. So if I actually open up what happened there in the background, so I mean the good thing is I wanted to show an error so then you could have a look at what happens when a bot does misbehave. It entered that one, which gives me the document number there, but DEC-X here, it decided not to. So let me double check. No, I didn't record it there. It normally, it would give you feedback into what the error was. So in that one it would say wrong company code and then you can fix it and go back and repair it and sort it out that way. So if I go back into the, let me go into the cloud environment just to show you how that all kind of runs in the background. If my cloud environment ever decides to come back. Okay, it's coming. So this is the bot environment. Now, if you have a look, I've got 72 different packages in here. So these are the different packages which get deployed. And what you can do here to deploy, you just click onto there, you select an environment. So there's a few environments. So this is an environment which we all use, and I've got my own little environment. And we can hit deploy. All right. Now the other things we can do in here, we can, battery. I told you I'm having one of these days. We can change packet. We can also enable different things to happen in this area. So in here, as I mentioned before, we can actually expose this as an API, right? To then a workflow execute it and then call it in that way. So before I kill my battery, I've got one. I'm going to try and keep it short because I've only got like 10 minutes left. But what I'm going to do is, this is also our new technology called Document Information Extractor. And what this allows you to do is to drop an invoice on there well, let me go back. I'll upload it. And based on the invoice that it reads, it will then give you the semantic information. So this is actually the invoice which I'm uploading is my my Apple subscription. But as you can see here, we just grabbed a demo invoice. But what it's done is it's being able to give us the invoice, the name, the sender address, the invoice number, total amounts, and then it also breaks down line items as well. Right? So you can actually do line items with different purchase orders, and it will actually compare this to the SAP master data as well. Okay. So this is a fairly new tool. There's a test environment. If you go to sap.api.com, if you want to test it, you can have a test with that. It's one of our new tools. To give you some insight, we're using it as well internally. Let's talk about some of our concepts. We actually process over 1 million invoices, go back to here, over 1 million invoices a month using this technology for Concur, doing accounts payable. Okay, so that's just with Concur. I think we're training it with 1.5 million invoices. Okay, it's quite good. Different ways which we're also using bots. We've also got a HR bot called Lucy. Lucy goes through, uses Word to create the letter of offer and create the contract, and then sends the email out to the person who's been onboarded. Right? So there's another way of how we're using these bots internally to execute. We're finding all different ways. Actually, I've just heard yesterday our pre-sales team in Latin America have written a bot which, for people who work in SAP will understand, entering data into SAP CRM can be challenging at times. So what we've done is they've written a bot which automates that. Now they can fill the Excel spreadsheet, run the bot, and it fills in CRM for them. So that's something that's as well what we're using internally. So we're seeing different scenarios, right, where we're doing this. So another interesting scenario we're actually testing now in the mining world. One of our mining customers has a third-party, proprietary monitoring system, and we can't get to the data. But what they do is they have a Windows app, and so what we're doing is with the Windows app, we're capturing the information from the screen elements and entering it back into SAP Predictive Maintenance, and keeping that information in there. So it's also a bit of a cheeky way of kind of getting to data that you're not meant to. God knows if you would do that with SAP, how much trouble you'd get into. But to give you a bit of an idea of some of the other solutions that we're also building in this area, service ticket intelligence, for those who haven't used it already. We've actually developed another solution on top of this called Bosch, which is our self-healing service bot. And our guys are claiming within a month they can get deployed. You know, if it's talking to ServiceNow or some of the other things, using Soulman to come resolve some requests. So that's actually a pretty powerful tool. Document classification for creating, identifying the documents coming in. DIE, which I showed, and generic line matching. And we're kind of extending these technologies more so. So these AI business services we're providing more and more. I think the next slide is a bit more detailed into, and that's why I'm calling them SAP AI artificial applications, right? And that's why you might see this slide with Leonardo. I've removed Leonardo, and you'll probably see Leonardo disappear from a lot of these, but this will give you some of the insight into some of the, so, you know, we're not competing against the Googles and Microsofts and things like that around AI technologies. We're utilizing their technologies and creating business solutions on top of these technologies, right? So we'll use the best machine learning capability to execute the business services in our suite. Okay? So that's how, that's what I want you to kind of walk away and think about when you think about our technologies and moving through. Just a final kind of overview of some of the technologies. And we're basically embedding the whole idea of conversational AI, robotic process automation, all of these tools in all of our lines of business solutions. Right? So this is something that we're embedding, and you're going to see a lot more of. So that's pretty much what I wanted to talk about today. Apologies for the minor hiccups and the flashing, but feel free to email me and talk anytime, but happy to take questions. Yep.
Coming to the RPA one.
Yes.
I have two related questions. Are the tools like UiPath and automation anywhere? What is your view? How good or how far do they go in terms of scope coverage of SAP operations?
Sure. I'm I mean, I'm going to be very honest here. Look, UiPath and Blue Prism, they've been at this game a lot longer than what we have, right? They've got things like screen recording, which we're going to be releasing later this year. They're focused more on automating processes which involve third-party tools like the Microsofts and things like that. However, when it comes down to core SAP business process, we're going to have a lot more, especially targeting S4 moving forward. Right. So they kind of had the jump on us, especially in the traditional ECC world, exposing BAPIs and everything. In fact, I believe the guy from UiPath is an ex-SAP person. Right. But we're going to keep moving forward, especially with some of the newer S4 things. We're going to probably have a lot more than them coming forward. So that's our vision and our approach there. Mm-hmm.
The related second part to it, how does the current version of SAP IRPA compare with, say, Automation Anywhere to 019A and a recent version of UiPath which supports machine learning and other things?
Yeah, sure. So some of the things that I've seen and I've spoken to customers about, when they use things like Blue Prism, we have a GUI script component as well, right? So and I think where I want to differentiate is UiPath and some of these other technologies kind of do screen recording, so they capture and push areas, so they're basically doing like clicks and things like that. Where with our tool, we're actually identifying the UI element, the ID of that particular item, right? And that's how, for us, and the way I'm looking at it, especially when it comes down to GUI script. So Blue Prism, I've heard they've had problems when the GUI script is a bit more complex. We've made ours a lot more robust with the GUI script.
Automation Anywhere already works with the mechanism which you're saying you're trying to build into this.
Yes.
And then I'm speaking from experience.
Yeah. And I'm saying they've already got some of these technologies out there, but we're going to be moving forward, providing, obviously integrate into the SAP business process. Actually, before my laptop dies. Oh, thank God, I thought it died. Let me just quickly show you the tool. Let me bring this up. Okay, so if I go into, let me go back into workflow area. Let me go into activities. You see here we've got SAP Logon. Different activities we've got here now. This SAP API will plug into the API hub for SAP. So integrating into SAP, not only traditional ECC, but let it be Concur, let it be SuccessFactors, let it be all these other things which we'll have on API, is going to be a lot easier moving forward when we provide it here. Okay. So there's some of the key things I want you to remember and some of the differentiators when we do that.
By when do we expect that into production?
It's coming up this year. I always say planned because who knows? Customer priorities, what people want will determine when this comes out. I've seen it on the roadmap, but yeah, it will be later this year for sure.
Sure, thanks.
Yep, cool. Any more questions? Elsa?
Are we going to see a listing going to this Magic Studio or that's separate?
I've also heard and some interesting things with product management. We've also got another tool called RUM. I'm not sure if anyone's heard of RUM. SAP RUM. So it's a simple way to, I guess, automate some of the tasks. I think what we will do is try and provide that unified business platform approach or business, but for now we've still got them as separate tools only because it came from a different acquisition.
Not so much from a tooling point of view, from an IDE point of view. So
yeah.
The new IDE they're running out of Cloud Foundry.
Yes.
Where IDE will go and yeah.
That's exactly where we're looking at moving this as well. Because if you have a look, why have two workflow tools, right? You just put it in one. But yeah, it's all a transition migration process moving forward. And some of the other things we're going to do as well is bots. If you don't have an environment, we're actually going to provide an environment where you can deploy and test bots as well. So our own instances as well. So that's some of the other things that we're working on and releasing to make it easier to do automation in our environment.
Thanks for your presentation. You kind of addressed it previously.
Yep.
The previous question, just a bit, do you have any more detail about the actual UI integration? Like, what's the technology that it actually is using?
Yeah. When we go down into the detail, depending on the UI that you're targeting, it will use a specific technology, right? So, for example, here we're talking to a GUI screen. It will use a GUI scripting to be able to target the elements in there. When it's a Windows app, it will then target Windows 32 native API. So, you know, the traditional ID of an element on your Windows, so it has like 1001. That's what it will start. So we'll likely use the hardcore Windows 32 APIs to target that. Right. And when it comes down to using Excel and Word, then we have the Excel and Word libraries. So it's like using a VBA macro and being able to open access that. So
runtime, is it in Node?
It's in Node.
Picking up a
.NET.
Emulation.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
And so you still got to obviously be aware of the limitations of going through a GUI. You know that things will potentially change with upgrades or that kind of
Correct.
Re-record or
Correct. What I mean, especially now, because that whole machine learning bit isn't there yet, but what we're hoping is it will become smarter and identify, okay, there's been a change here, we'll just adjust the script. But yeah.
Obviously, you'll take an API over recording anyway.
Yes, correct.
Cool.
Yep.
Thanks very much.
Cool. Any more questions? Cool. All right.